PowerPoint.
We need the help with the slide, okay. I've been quiet for the last day and a half. I lost my voice, as you can hear, and I hope to be able to conclude the lecture. If not, I really do apologize. What I would like to do in the coming 30 minutes is just to present you data from 4 different sites that I've been excavating and working on for the last 15 years, to present you the data coming from those sites, the interpretation of the data, and on that to try to build a model and convince you that this model best present our knowledge of the last phase of human evolution. As you can see, luckily enough, we have a sequence of caves starting from roughly around 400,000 years ago with the Kesem cave. It's an anterior culture, which is very specific to our region. Then we have Mislia cave with the hominin from Mislia cave, 185,000. Nesher cave, not yet published. This is a new cave and a new site with new hominin. And the last one, Manot cave, around 55,000 years. So we have some kind of a coverage of the last 500,000 years in Israel. The first one is Kesem cave. This was probably one of the largest and most important caves ever found, I think, globally. Unfortunately, as you can see from the highway next to the cave, it was an accidental find, and by the time the inspector of the IA arrived to the site, unfortunately, most of the cave was destroyed. It was a huge cave that contained only what we call, as I said, a shallow Hebridean culture. The date, they said, roughly between 400 to 220,000 years. What was left from it, you see just very few sections of the cave that we've been excavating in the last few years with Professor Goffer and Professor Barkai. And what we have found there is a set of teeth. The green one was published first, and later on the red one were published. And once we published it, people quite quickly appreciated the importance of those isolated teeth, because those are almost the only fossils that we have from the Near East, well-dated fossils from the Near East from the time period between 400,000 and 200,000 years ago. Now, if we follow the morphology of the teeth from all aspects, I don't want to go into too many details. You can see them all in the slides, but you can, if you pick teeth tooth by tooth, you can see that the clear affinity with the Neanderthal lineage. I'm not saying that the Kesem hominins are Neanderthals. What I'm saying that they are affiliated with probably some kind of Neanderthals. So here you have an example from the upper right canine, and you have an example from a left lateral incisor. You see the marked degree of labial convexity, which is considered to be Neanderthal characteristics. And even if we go deeper inside into the topography of the dentin, we can see the mid-trigonoid crest very well preserved and present in the Kesem teeth, which is also considered to be a Neanderthal trait. And if we move to some morphometric analysis, either 2D or 3D morphometric analysis, even if you take a single teeth like the deciduous molar, upper deciduous molar, whatever you do, what kind of analysis that you do, whether you do the EDJ topography, whether you go with the crown topography, whether you go with the cervical topography, you can see that those hominins from Kesem cave always fall within the Neanderthal range. If we move to another teeth, for example, the second molar, the pink one are the Neanderthals, and you see way down at the bottom, QC is Kesem Cave. Again, it falls within the range of the Neanderthal morphology. So, in summary, what we can say about the Kesem Cave teeth and the Kesem Cave hominins, they are probably affiliated with the Neanderthal lineage. I think we all can agree on that. The second cave is Mislia Cave, which was just published. It's the most northern cave on the Mount Carmel ridge. It's a beautiful cave. Today it's a rock shelter, but 200,000 years ago it was a huge cave. Much of the roof had collapsed long time ago. And what is interesting about the cave, at least the upper layer of the cave, that it is, what we find there is what we call early middle Paleolithic industry. This is extremely important when it comes to the dating of the cave, as you shall see later on. There are huge amount of data coming from the different archaeological sediments. The sediments goes down for at least 4 or 5 meters. Most of the cave was already excavated. And it was recently published by myself and my colleagues and many other collaborators not long time ago. So, who were living in Mislia Cave? Let's examine again the fossils. Sure enough, when we first published it, it got its attention because it was considered to be the first modern humans outside Africa. But let's look at the data. The first thing and most important thing, sure enough, is the dating. Because I can easily convince you, as you will see later on, that this is a modern human maxilla. The problem is to convince you that this maxilla is at least 180,000 years old. By the way, it is probably much older. But as you can see, all the early middle Paleolithic industry is roughly ranged between 140,000 and 270,000. So Mislia specimen must be, by definition, older than 140,000. All the tail ages that you can see over there all fall within the range of the early middle Paleolithic period. And if we collect all the data together, put it together, we have the range of between 276 to 140. But if we go to a more detail, we see that the old TL ages, the average TL ages that are coming from the nearby square gives us around 180,000 years. If we go for TL ages coming from quite a remote square, they are still within the same range of 185,000 years. And if we take the US ESR combined data, we are around 174,000 years. What you have to appreciate that the Mislia specimen was found at the very upper layer of the cave. The layer are going deep down for at least 5 meters, as I told you before, and the earlier dates from the cave going down to 270. Okay, this is the maxilla itself. Let's look just at the morphology of the maxilla very quickly. This is the maxilla. It's a mirror imaging, and by all definition, by its basic morphology, as you can see, trait by trait, you analyze it trait by trait, it tells you right away this is a modern maxilla. If we go to the shape of the zygomatic or alveolar crest, you do a GM analysis again, and you can see very nicely that Mislia fall within the modern human range. It's outside the Neanderthal range, always falling within the modern range. If we go and we analyze all the teeth, we had almost 8 complete teeth, as you could see. You can see again very nicely that Mislia falls within the heart of the modern human cloud. And another important thing that you should pay attention to, and we shall come to it later on, is the fact that the calf teeth, the calf hominin and the shul hominin in this type of analysis also always form a separate cloud, a cloud of themselves. They are not, that they don't fall really within the Neanderthals, they don't follow really with modern humans, they have their own cloud, and we shall see it later on. Here you can see it again, Mislia again, and you can see up there, the green one are the Hershkovitz 15, and some other, I don't see it from that far away. But again, keep on going, convincing you that this is indeed a modern human jaw. This is important because it tells you, beside the fact that it keeps giving the same data again and again and again, keep repeating the same information, there are two important things to pay attention to. The first thing that you should pay attention to is that Amud 1, which is considered to be Neanderthal, if you judged Amud 1 just by the teeth themselves and ignore the rest of the morphology, the teeth will fall within the modern human range. Always. I've done that. Jean-Jacques has done that before, and many other people have done that. The other thing that you could pay attention to, that the Kafze population is basically split into two subgroups. Okay? On one side we have Kafze 9, and on the other side we have Kafze 6. And to them some other Kafze specimens are joining together. Okay, here we have it again. Again, you see where Mislia is with just the outline of the crown of the molar. Again, it's very clear, and you see the cloud, the unique cloud formed by the Kafze specimen. This is a wonderful parameter. It is not commonly used, unfortunately, but it is quite one of the strongest parameters to differentiate between Neanderthal teeth and modern human teeth. It's just by measuring the relationship between the anterior, between actually the lateral incisors and the first molar, and you see that there are two clouds down there. The gray points are modern humans, dark up are the Neanderthals, and somewhere in the middle we have the Kafze population. The Kafze population, the Kafze population in between those two groups. Mislia fall also something in between between the range. So just to make a short summary, as you can see, I think we can all agree that Mislia, by definition, by its morphology, by the teeth, by the morphology of the maxilla, suggests that it belongs to a modern human specimen. I mean modern human, I mean Homo sapiens. I hate myself to use the term a modern human. It's Homo sapiens. Sorry. So just here, let's put now the major players on the map. So we have Mislia at 180. You have to remember that Mislia is 180, but modern humans probably have arrived to the Near East much, much earlier, at least 250,000 years ago. And if we build a model, so the first out of Africa, the evidence that we have for the first out of Africa is around at least 180,000. As I said, it is probably much earlier. This helps us to explain the existence of modern humans or Homo sapiens very early in China, and if you believe it, also in San Diego around 130,000 years ago. You know, I don't want to say anything about it, but whenever you put the cover of Nature, remember that some of the most unreasonable things have been published in Nature as well. It's just a guarantee for a good science, always, not always, just to remind you and give you of an excellent example. So what it tells us again is that actually the Kafze-Schul hominin are actually at least 100,000 years later than the first migration out of Africa, because the Kafze-Schul hominin were considered for many, many years to be the earliest modern humans out of Africa, and it is no longer so. Actually, they are there. I'm not sure if they came out of Africa. This is another story. And there is another component to it, and I will elaborate it on later on, and if Copan mention it, we always forget to include the Asian component into our story. For many, many years, the story of the Levant was an African-European story, and actually the Asian part was neglected and ignored, basically. Now we know that it was a big mistake. So this is another site. You see that now the new sites in Israel, by the way, are not connected to the Mount Carmel Ridge or to the Upper Galilee. Most of them are coming from the coastal plain. Those are huge open sites, immense open sites, as you can see it here. Nesher Ramle, not yet published, hopefully be published soon. And it was just a depression. And the depression is filled with 8 layers, 6 layers of archaeological layers, which is unbelievable. And some of the living floors look like that. Hundreds of thousands of animal bones spread together, mixed with different type of stone tools, as you can see it here. And from that huge site, unfortunately, we have one parietal, but sometimes a single bone can be very informative. We have the right parietal and some some fragments from the left parietal, but I think it's very informative, and we were able actually to make a reconstruction, virtual reconstruction of the endocast, and since Nesher Ramle is between 170 to 120, it was critical to define to which group of hominin this specific fossil can be affiliated. So I will show you the slides. You're all anthropologists, you know how to look at them, and you can see right away that it is a very thick skull. Just you see Nesher Ramle is in top, all the rest are modern humans. It's very thick, it lacks the typical curvature, the eminence, the parietal eminence, and even the internal part of the bone is very different from modern humans. So it is clear not a modern human. Now, if you do another, by the way, another simple and good criteria to differentiate between modern humans and some other archaic Homo is to measure the angle between the coronal and the sagittal suture. And as you can see it here, it's a very simple measurement, but the differentiation between the different groups is clear-cut. I mean, as you can see on the left side, the Nesher Ramle is falling within the range of Homo erectus, Asian Homo erectus, and African Middle Paleolithic Homo. It is on the lower range of Neanderthal and outside the range of modern humans. If you do a thickness map, again, you could see that and we could see it also already from the CT scan, but here you have a CT map of the whole parietal bone, and it clearly shows that it is very close to what we call to the pre-Neanderthals, or something like that. I like to call them Middle Paleolithic Homo, rather than call them Heidelbergensis or later Heidelbergensis or pre-Neanderthals or so on. But still, you could easily see it's not a modern human. It's not even a Neanderthal, because Neanderthal have much thinner cranial bones than Nesher Ramle. It is more like the Homo erectus, late Homo heidelbergensis, as I said, middle Pleistocene Homo. Now, if we go to the blood vessel, which can be very informative, look on the left side. On the left side, what you see, these branches are emerging from the posterior branch of the middle meningeal artery or the middle meningeal vessel, not from the anterior one. The first thing that you can see is the simplicity of the network. I mean, there are almost no anastomosis between the anterior branch and the posterior branch. There are very few branches. But what is more important is that the posterior branch of the middle meningeal system is much more developed than the anterior branch, which takes us to middle Pleistocene Homo, if you would like, to Homo erectus, to Heidelbergensis, and so on. And remember, this specimen is quite late. Now, if you go to the right bottom side, you can see something else. Usually, the most protruding part of the brain is in the lower part of the frontal lobe. But over here, what you can see the lateral sulcus on red, and you could see that the most protruding part of the brain is within the temporal lobe, very down, close to the bottom of the skull, if you would like. And if you make just a posterior view of all these different hominin groups, you could see what we call the flattening of the parietal region. The flattening of the parietal region is not a Neanderthal-like, as you know. Sure enough, it's not modern. It's what we call archaic Homo heidelbergensis, or pre-Neanderthals, or something like that. But surely not Neanderthals and not modern humans. So now, usually we always go to the morphometric analysis. It was quite difficult to do and to obtain a method that will allow us to do morphometric analysis of a single bone, but it was possible eventually. And as you can see, is that actually, if you look at the left upper figure, you could see that actually that Nesher Ramle, the parietal bone, is located somewhere between Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, and very early Neanderthals, like close to Petralona, for example, but also close to some Asian late Homo erectus, which is quite important. Now, if you look at the quadratic discriminant analysis on your right side, you see the same thing again and again and again. It's outside the range of modern humans, and it is somewhere on the border between Neanderthals and Homo erectus, which is quite peculiar. So summary, we all agree that it is not Neanderthal, it is not a modern human, it is probably some kind of a pre-Neanderthal or late Homo heidelbergensis, let's call them late Middle Pleistocene Homo. The last site that I was engaged with, which is important to our story, is the Manot Cave site. It was found in the Upper Galilee. As you could see, there was actually, most of the entrance to the caves in Israel was collapsed long time ago. And sometimes you don't even realize that the caves are there. It happens with many caves. This is one of the examples. And while a bulldozer was cutting a sewer line, they hit the roof of the cave, and for 2 years we actually came down rappelling from the roof into the cave. Eventually, we had to open our own entrance to the cave. We don't know even today where was the original entrance to the cave, but this was one of the most fascinating, I think, beautiful prehistoric cave ever found. It's a stalagmite, active karstic cave, as you can see. You can see yourself, just enjoy the beautiful view of the cave with almost 18 meters of archaeological sediment inside the cave. Now, unfortunately, the skull itself that was found in Mislia in one of the rooms was not found in an archaeological zone. It was found in an isolated room inside the cave, as you can see it yourself, and the cast was later on dated and gave an age of around 55, 60,000 years ago. The cave is, as I said, huge. We are currently excavating the upper layer, which is Achmarian and Aurignacian layer with considerable and fascinating find. I don't have time to elaborate on it. I want to go straight to the point. And so we basically studied the skull itself, and it's an interesting skull. It's an interesting skull in the sense that it, together with some archaic features that are clear-cut, and you can see it yourself. I mean, if you compare it to some Neanderthals or even Levantine Neanderthal, it is very modern by definition. I mean, we can argue forever what is a modern skull, what is a Homo sapiens skull, how we define it morphologically. But there are at least some characteristics that we all agree on, and I think they clearly show us that Mislia, especially the vertical walls, the lateral vertical walls, the location of the widest part of the skull up there. And if we go and do a thorough analysis of the brain case, of the endocast itself, it is fully modern. And if we make the measurement on the cast, and we measure the relationship between the different lobes, we still fall within the modern range. You can see it yourself in all type of analysis, either 2D, 3D, Mislia, Manot, skull, endocast fall within the modern human range. So we move, sure enough, for the geometric morphometric analysis of the skull. And what you can see here, which is extremely important, first of all, the grayish part is modern human, Homo sapiens, different population from different parts of the world, and you can see that Manot falls within the cloud. Within it, it's just a modern human skull, no doubt about it. Next to it is Kaf the 9. But some other specimen, as I keep saying it over and over again, look at Kaf the 6, for example, or Skull 5. They fall on the border between Neanderthals and modern humans, always. Now, this is an important, and I'm glad that Johannes is here because he published a paper on Aduma skull long ago. He never appreciated how important the skull would be in the future, but this is the only remnant or any fossil that we have actually from the last wave of migrants coming out of Africa, the big one, the one that makes the difference, the one that actually is from which all modern human population outside Africa emerged, the haplogroup L3 group. And as you can see it in Manot, you see morphometrically, is African. Now, not just that it is African, the closest next to the African populations are the very early upper Paleolithic skull from Ladech and Predmost, which tells you that it's in a certain time, these populations start moving and establish the very early upper Paleolithic populations in Europe. So I think we all agree on that Manot 1 represents a modern human specimen. Okay, so let's now look at the model. I showed you the data, and I think we all agree on that. Let's put again the major players on the map, and first migration. First migration coming out of Africa around, as I said, at least 250,000 years. I mean, there are some indirect evidence from China. Second migration, we add another players from Africa to the game. And we have the Hershkovitz hominin between 120 and 80,000 years. And we have then, we add another, now we add the Aduma as the next player in Africa. We have a third migration, and the third migration is coming out of Africa around between 60 to 70,000 years ago. Manot is between 50 to 60,000 years ago, could be slightly older. They either took the northern route or the southern route. It really doesn't matter, or both routes if you want. It is not that important. And later on, around 45,000 years ago, they start migrating either to the west into Europe, as you can see it yourself, with enough evidence to suggest that this had happened somewhere around 45,000 years ago, and another wave, more or less at the same time, went to the east through Central Asia to Siberia. Now let's put the timeline. Let's look at the model itself. So this is what I call the alternating model. Okay, so and from 400,000 to 220, I would say 250, even 270, we have what we call pre-Neanderthals, or let's say middle Pleistocene Homo. Then at around 220, or else slightly earlier even than that, we have modern humans. We have evidence from Islia and the Ionim cave. Then again, we have evidence for the presence of Neanderthals or pre-Neanderthals, Nesher Ramle and Tabun. And then again, around 120, we have the Hershkovitz hominin, which are considered to be modern humans. And then again, the classic Neanderthals from Israel, from Amud, from Kebara, now from a new site called En Kashish. They're all more or less falling within the same time period. And then again, a modern human. So it's an alternating model, basically, with three different penetration, large waves of modern humans from Africa into the Middle East. So basically what you would think is that this land, as it happens today, and it happened in recent history, was changing hands between Neanderthals and modern humans all the time. For a certain period, we had Neanderthals, then we had modern humans, Neanderthals again, and so on and so on. I will take another 2 minutes, okay? But there is another possibility. There is another possibility, and this possibility emerged from the fact that we can now, with the new data and the new method that we have to relook and re-examine the old fossils. Not just looking for the new fossil all the time, but look for the old fossils and see what they tell us and how they can fit into the story. I don't want to go into many details because I ran out of my time. Just to let you know that I was not the first one to suspect, for example, that Taboon 1 is not a classic Neanderthal. It was already said by Gerard, by McCown, by Kate, and all the earlier anthropologists who studied these fossils. And look at the cuffs and the skull hominins. Honestly, when you look at them, would you group them together if you wouldn't know that they are coming more or less from a very small restricted area and they are dated more or less to the same time? Would you put them together as one single morphological group? I don't think so. I don't think so. Look at the difference between Kafze 9 and Kafze 6. Look at Skull 1, which is totally different from the rest of the Kafze hominins. So now if we do the analysis, again, I don't want to go into detail, but believe me, there are a lot of data now to prove it and to show it, okay, that they do not belong from where we thought for many, many years that they belong with. I mean, we have to rethink, as Lee said before, we have to keep an open mind in the sense if we want to make a progress, we have to re-examine our hypothesis, we have to re-examine our data, and maybe we can come with a different conclusion. If we take Amud, for example, which is considered Eastern Neanderthal, but classic Neanderthal, we could easily see that Amud 1 is missing many of the classic Neanderthal traits. If we go to the teeth, you could, as I told you before, and there are more and more analysis coming out, it keeps showing on that the teeth fall within the modern human range. Again, another analysis. So maybe let's look at another model. And this actually integrates with what Jean-Jacques said before, from where the late Neanderthals of Europe picked up their modern humans' genes, or the mitochondrial genes. So let's look at the model. Again, we start with the same model as you can see it yourself. And then we have some mishmash of population. We have all kinds of population in Israel living side by side, like Taboon and Mislia and Hayonim and Nesher. Some of them are more, living next next to the other. And think about it, maybe all these, what we call now, we used to call early modern humans outside Africa, the Schul specimen, the Kafze specimen, and maybe the Amud specimens are not what we thought they are. Maybe just a hybrid population. Because what I see now from the fossil record from Israel, from a very small geographical area, is that modern humans, or Homo sapiens and pre-Neanderthals, were living side by side for a longer period of time. And actually what we see here, the way we see it, maybe they are not what we thought. They are not really modern humans in the full sense. And then, sure enough, around 60,000 years, all those populations are replaced. They didn't contribute anything to modern population, as you may all know. And thank you. I managed to survive.